what are the flat earthers? Well, you have a lot of sects, a lot of religions within the religion known as flat earth. Okay, some are fanatics about, they're moonies, and moonies are people who don't believe we went to the moon. Okay, so I think all flat earthers are moonies. Okay, but some of them try to explain gravity using, for example, we covered this the other day, buoyancy, inertia, density. They use these words. Others talk about electricity causing, they're like the electric universe. So they like that aspect of it. And they have all these different sects within flat Earth. Okay. And this fellow is a fellow who talks about the ether. Okay. He's a guy who proposes the ether, and he created made a video about a week ago and so on. And someone referred him to me. And so I thought I'd analyze what this fellow had to say about the ether, because we were talking about the ether. And his name is Austin, and I don't know his last name, but it sounds something like Nitwit. It reminded me of John Cleese in Faulty Towers, trying to educate Manuel. Okay, so especially after reading his site, or listening to his video, not very positive what he had to say, because he believes that with the ether he can explain everything. Okay, and so this is what he says in general. Okay, this is out of his video. Ether is a proposed logical foundation of interpretation. Okay, it is a philosophical framework. Philosophical. I'm wondering what this has to do with physics. Okay, and a lot of people may not fully grasp this. Yeah, I'm one of those. I don't want to grasp it at all. I mean, what's it got to do with philosophy? It's a framework to explain a lot of physical phenomena. Okay, so this fellow's talking about philosophy that he thinks is philosophy, okay? And he's going to bring this into physics, okay? He says it's a framework of philosophy, and he's going to be explaining something in physics. I guess gravity, magnetism, all that stuff, right? So maybe people don't fully realize that it's a framework of interpretation. Yeah, so far I can't follow you, because philosophy has nothing at all to do with physics, okay? So it is logic. Maybe. I don't know what kind of logic he has. It is a logical framework. So by definition, it is philosophy. Well, that's strange that he would say that, because here we have what philosophy is. Okay, and Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It doesn't define the term at all. You won't find the word philosophy defined in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Now that's a big absentee there, right? Big no-show. I mean, if you don't define philosophy, what is your site about? What is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy if we don't know what philosophy is, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy? Okay? But then you look up the words elsewhere, and you find the study of fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. Now, existence has nothing to do with philosophy. The word existence belong exclusively to physics. Physics is the science of existence. Anyone talking about existence, whether it's about God or the table or the Klingons on the other side of the universe, he has crossed the line, whether he knows it or not, into physics. Okay, so it has nothing to do with philosophy. Okay, same with reality. Reality is a synonym of existence. So all he said is existence twice. And philosophy has nothing to do with knowledge. Okay, knowledge is a branch of religion. Okay, in physics and science, we do not know, and philosophy is one of the two branches of science. One is physics, the other one is philosophy. Now, the definition of activity people undertake when they seek to understand fundamental truths. Truth is an opinion about themselves, the world in which they live, and their relationship to the world. I don't think that has anything to do with philosophy at all. For that, you need to define philosophy. And the Wikipedia says the systematized study of general and fundamental questions such as those about existence, reason, knowledge, same thing as the others. No, philosophy has nothing to do with that. Definition of philosophy, you see it down there, rational explanations of purposes and reasons. And it is chopped there. Anything that's not within that definition does not belong to philosophy. Okay? So all these people in the past, like Aristotle, Plato, Hume, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Ayn Rand, Wittgenstein, Russell, Bertrand Russell, right? Sartre, none of those were philosophers. None of those were philosophers. Okay. Now you might say, Bill, but you're going against the grain. Everybody calls these people philosophers. Well, before you can call them philosophers, you need to define the word philosophy. Okay. And when you define it as, these sources have defined it, well, you cannot place your finger on what philosophy is. If philosophy is just a way of thinking, then everybody's a philosopher. We got 8 billion philosophers on the planet, and we can't distinguish you from Plato. You're all philosophers. No, we have to define the word philosophy so we know what we're talking about, what the discipline is about. And there you have a definition. You don't like it? No problem. Produce your own mousetrap. Make a better mousetrap. That's the only recourse you have. You have to define philosophy in a way that we can use it consistently, scientifically. Okay? And so there you have it. Science is rational explanations, and philosophy is the branch that studies purposes and reasons. Philosophy only deals with behavior. So, a historian might tell you why someone went to, like why Napoleon went to Waterloo. That's a behavior. That's a purpose, a reason. That's philosophy. And a psychologist or a psychiatrist might tell you why you behave this way or whatever. And that's also philosophy. Okay. And that's where philosophy is limited to that, behaviors. Okay. He says, ether is postulated to be an energetic metaphysical background. Whatever that is. What is energy? There is no physical object called energy. And he says it's metaphysical, whatever that means. What are you talking about? You're talking about transcendental, something that's, not even beyond the mind. I mean, what is this? What is this energetic metaphysical? And again, they use all these ascetic words or transcendental words, words of spiritualism, and they think they're making sense. Okay? That acts as a medium. He's saying that he's got this energetic metaphysical abstraction, I guess. That's what he means. And then he calls it a medium, or he wants to treat it as a medium. Medium is very simple in physics. Medium is that which has shape. That's a medium. Okay? So either it has shape or it don't. So if God wants to be an object, he has to have shape. And if God don't have shape because God is spirit, God is love, God is intelligence, then God ain't an object, a medium, a thing. That's how simple it is. And if he ain't a thing, he doesn't exist by definition, because exist is a thing that has location. We're done. That's how simple it is. If it don't have location, it doesn't exist. If it's not an object, it can't even begin to exist. It's a concept. There's only concepts and objects, period. There's no other category. Okay? So either ether is a medium or it ain't. It can't be both. Okay? Either it has shape or it don't. Okay, more specifically, it is pure potential. Well, potential doesn't sound like a medium. Potential sounds like a mathematical word that we should never use in physics or in science for that matter. What is potential? What's that got to do with science or with physics? So if ether is a potential, whatever that is, you're talking about a mathematical abstraction. That's how simple it is, straightforward. So we're not talking about a thing. Okay? And what's so important about that is later on, he's going to have these non-things interact with things. That's where the problem's going to be. So keep that in mind. Okay. Put another way, it is what comprises all fills. So he's going to fill in the voids with this thing he calls ether. So here you have an object, a ball. Okay. You have a ball. I guess the vortices or the spaces in between are filled with this so-called ether. In other words, he's saying that ether is space, what we call space in physics, which means it's nothing. Okay, because that's what space is, nothing, that which has no shape. That's what space is. Object, that which has shape. Space, that which doesn't. That's how simple it is. We got these two words which are antonyms, right? Object and space. Something and nothing. That's simple. That's how simple it is. Ether, is an energetic metaphysical background that acts as a medium or substrate that sustains electromagnetic phenomena. Okay, so he's going to treat it as a medium, and he's also going to treat it as a non-thing. He wants it as both. That's where the problem starts. So we have the ether is both. It's something and nothing at the same time. He covered both bases. He covered all bases. So, with that, you can do all kinds of things. When you bring this spirit that you can treat as a thing, and at the same time, it's a nothing because it ain't there. So it's something and nothing. It is and it ain't. Great. So how do you make sense of something like that? You have a contradiction built in there. Okay, and so he does realize that. He says that is the critique that people make out there against the ether. And listen to him. Here it is again. He says, one of the critiques is the use of the word medium here. Medium being defined as some type of substance or material. Exactly. Not exactly, but medium object is that which has shape. Not all shapes, not all objects, right, are substances or are material. They're substances because substance is a synonym of object, of thing, but material is not. Okay, material usually refers to objects that exist, matter. Matter is objects that exist, in other words, existence. Whereas substance does not. Substance can be something abstract. Okay, we could call it a substance. For sure, you can have, squares. Squares don't exist, and squares are things, objects. You can call them substance. If you can use it as a synonym. You can use the word body, structure, any of those to refer to a square because a square has shape. But a square is not material. Okay, so you just want to make that difference here. Something immaterial can't be called a medium. Okay, an immaterial medium is an oxymoron. Right on. But this is the criticism that's lodged against the etherists, or the people who believe in ether or propose ether. If you invoke a materialist definition, meaning there's nothing outside the material world, physics, well, we can't talk about anything metaphysical effectively. Yeah, no kidding. Because the word abstract, which I guess that's what he's referring to with metaphysical, beyond physics, as Aristotle called his metaphysics, right? When you're talking about metaphysical, you're talking about abstractions, something which is abstract, okay? And it turns out that abstract is the opposite of physical. Physics deals with the physical, not with the abstract, okay? And so he's got a contradiction because he's going to say that you can't talk about the metaphysical if you're going to talk about the material world, meaning the world of physics, the physical world. Yeah, no kidding. There's a contradiction there. And he says terrible semantical arguments, okay? And yeah, one fellow, in fact, doubles up on that, on the immaterial stuff, and he says the following. He says, of course we do experiments in science, okay? He talks about experiments. Listen to this. As for the ether, who cares about the name? Ether is invisible. Learn fluid dynamics, okay? I don't know about fluid dynamics, but if the ether is invisible, and of course they say it's immaterially intangible, right? What experiments are you going to be doing to detect the ether, okay? So he's got a little contradiction there because we have an invisible and intangible immaterial medium, right? Which they say, look, you cannot reach to it. You can't reach it with an experiment, right? Because you can't see or touch it. So we've got a contradiction. He says we have to do experiments, but we're going to detect this ether, I guess, which is invisible and intangible. And yeah, as you can see at the end, this fellow says terrible semantical argument. And yeah, this is what these people always bring up. Okay, let me move it over here. And so what do they say? They always accuse me of doing semantics. Okay, they say, "Oh, you're doing semantics when you define words, when you harp so much on language, on grammar, on definitions." They don't like it because it destroys their religion. And yeah, let me put it nicely. Science is 150% semantics. Okay? If you don't tell me what your words mean specifically, before you give your presentation, if you just start ranting, oh, the ether, it's a metaphysical whatever, and it's a medium, but it's an abstract medium, you can't see or touch it, it's an immaterial medium, and all this stuff, well, yeah, you've got so much contradictions that we have to stop you before you continue. You can't continue giving your presentation because we haven't understood your foundation yet. So you got to identify the ether first. And if you're going to treat it as a medium, and you're going to say, like this fellow's going to say in a minute, that it interfaces and interacts with matter, then we've got a serious problem here because we've got this abstraction, this non-entity, this concept, and it's going to start banging against matter. This is what this guy's going to argue. That's why, what he proposes is absolute nonsense. Okay, so here he continues, says, it acts as a medium. It is what sustains or carries, like on your back, carries electromagnetic energy. How do you carry energy? I mean, you grab it with a spoon and just take it over like that, How do you carry energy? And so they use this language. And they say, oh, you're playing semantics, Bill. Yeah, they don't know how to talk. That's why I do semantics, because they have all these garbage words that were shoved up their nose holes in high school by the mathematicians who created them. And they don't even realize these are mathematical words, that they're words that only relate to mathematical physics, which has nothing to do with science. Okay? Mathematical physics is an attempt by the mathematicians to bring their equations over into physics and try to tell us that they can understand, meaning that they can explain, right, the mechanisms that Mother Nature, Father Universe, God, the devil, whoever you pray to, use to run the world every day. And all they're doing is descriptions, and because they cannot explain, they've invented all these words such as energy and inertia and whatever. They even created ether, the word ether. Okay, and it says, there is no intertwined metaphysical interaction between the metaphysical and the physical world. There is an. If there is an interaction, if they're intertwined with the physical world, how do you have a concept such as ether, which is what he defined it as? He's saying it's immaterial, it's not there at all, but it interfaces and interacts, this concept, with your hand, with a table, with a rock, with a tree, with your house. We have a problem because there's a terrible contradiction here. How do you have the word love or the word intelligence or any other concept you can imagine? How about energy? Now there's a word, or the word field. How do they interact with matter if they're concepts? How do you have concepts such as force interact with my hand? You know, I can have another hand interact with my hand, but not the word force. The word force cannot touch my hand because the word force is a concept. And this is what this fellow is doing. He's saying ether is a concept, it's an abstraction, it's what, metaphysical? It ain't an object, it isn't a thing, and it's going to hit my hand. Yeah, it interfaces, it's intertwined. And it says you can be semantical with everything. Again, these people accuse people being semantics. You guys see it here. No, I don't have it. Anyways, and so they always say you're doing semantics. You know, and we don't do semantics. We came here to do physics. And when they do physics, they have abstract concepts interfacing, interacting with objects. If you confine all your definitions to materialism, it's stupid. Well, he hasn't explained why it's stupid. Okay, because physics is only materialistic. You have to have objects. You can't do physics without an object. You can't do action at a distance. Action at a distance is known as black magic. Okay, because you haven't understood the mechanism, and you're assuming that Mother Nature does these things with concepts that man invented. Not even man. It's mathematicians. Okay? Those are who invented those concepts. Ether acts as a medium in which the phenomena of light, electrical actions at a distance, and propagation takes place. Yeah, again, you have to explain that. Otherwise, that's black magic, to say action at a distance. And ether is immaterial, thus intrinsically cannot be science. There we agree. Yeah, we agree. It cannot be science. Whatever you're doing, forget it. Okay, fellow does have, a little hole in his understanding of, really because he wasn't exposed to this site. And so this is what he puts for the atoms through the ages. Okay, so he's got all these atoms, okay, from John Dalton, Thomson's plum pudding model there, Rutherford's proton, Bohr's electron bead going around, right, and Schrodinger's, what is it, the cloud model. Okay, the Schrodinger and Born model there. But what this fellow is not aware of is my model, and that's this one, okay? The Bill Gatey model. And we have a totally different model of the atom than all these bozos from quantum mechanics who had no idea whatsoever about physics. All they did was math, okay? So we have a different atom. With this atom, we can explain quantum jump. We can explain light. Light is the torsion along the rope that interconnects any two atoms in the universe. All atoms are physically, not abstractly or metaphysically. They're physically interconnected by a very thin, right, extremely thin, what we call electromagnetic rope. Okay, it's a rope-like structure. We use the word rope only because it has that architecture, and only because of that. That's the only similarity between a rope that you buy at the hardware store and what you see there. And light is a torsion along the rope. Torsion is the fastest wave, if you want to call it that, known to light, because it goes nowhere. Essentially, it torsion, in the case of a rope, it twirls in situ, in place, right? And the signal is what appears at the other end. And you can do this at home. You can take a rope, and just tie it to the wall or to something. And as soon as you torque it, you'll see that there's a thump on that object that is at the other end. Okay, so torsion is the fastest thing known to man. It's faster than longitudinal wave, which is faster than a transverse wave. Okay, and so our model is more or less like this. This is the construction of our atom, okay? And here you see it. Give it a second here, and it'll start again. But essentially, all atoms in the universe are connected to all other atoms, okay? And what you have is there's the atom up close, and here's how it's built, how it's constructed. You have the electric thread goes through the center of the atom, forms what we are going to know as the proton star. It's going to be a star-like entity in the center, okay? And coming around is the another thread, which arbitrarily we call it the magnetic thread, and that forms the electron shell, a membrane that encapsulates the proton star. And all those ropes are connected to every atom in the universe. You can see the ropes there converging upon the edge of the electron shell. Okay? So you can see it there. This is our atom. It's a different atom than what the quantum mechanics came up with. That atom expands and contracts the electron shell. It expands and contracts, and that's going to be the quantum jump. Okay. So yeah, we do have a different kind of atom, and based on that atom, we can explain light, gravity, magnetism, electricity, and also, the workings of the atom in general. Okay? So yeah, we have a different atom. Okay. And what is the ether, according to us? Well, it's a bunch of particles. And what these people have done all these years is just wave it around, and they don't wave the whole ether. See, when you say, I'm going to wave the tree, you don't wave a branch, you wave the whole tree. If you're going to wave the branch, you say, I'm going to wave the branch. But what these people say is, the ether is all over the universe. And you say, well, what is light? And they say, it's the waving of the ether. So are they saying the whole ether waves up and down, the whole thing as a single block, as a single fluid entity? Is that what they're saying? No, they're saying that what vibrates is a little tiny piece of that ether, or a little region, and that's what they're going to call light. Okay, so and at least that's what it was until the 19th century. Okay, and so here it is. That's the ether. Okay, it's a bunch of particles that form like a backdrop, and they are particles because they call it a fluid. And if it's a fluid, hopefully a fluid is made of parts. And so if it's made of parts, this is how they all envisioned it in the past. In fact, I touched upon that the other day, where I told what all these folks in the old days, and especially in the 17th century, they were the ones who resuscitated the ether, essentially from what the Greeks had done. First one was Descartes, and he came up and he proposed the ether again. It was also proposed by everyone in the 17th century, all the way to the 19th century. Newton believed in the ether, Huygens, all of them, they all believed in the ether, and they thought it was the waving of the ether that was light. And what was the ether? A bunch of particles. And that's what it always was. That's always what it has been. And what the mechanics, quantum mechanics did, and what the relativists did, they went in there and they changed the names. That's all they did. The mechanics call it the false vacuum, and relativists call it space-time. So all they did was change the names. I mean, what is space-time made out of? It's made out of events. What is an event? A point in space-time. So we have all these little tiny little points that make up space-time, and that whole thing sounds like a sandbox. And a sandbox is what the ether is, a bunch of particles. And the mechanics, they say, yeah, when it vibrates, we have a wave. And that wave is what light is, a transverse wave. So yeah, ether, forget about it. Until someone can define, you have two choices. You either define the ether and tell me what you mean by the word ether. Hopefully you cannot define it, because if you define it, it's a concept. Okay, it can't be an object, can't be a thing. It's a concept. So concepts we define, objects we point to. You have to show me an image and say, that's a rock, that's a tree, that's a house, that's ether. That's how it works. And we want to see the whole shebang. Okay, so we have to see the whole shebang. Okay, you have to show me all of the ether, the shape of the ether. Okay, you can't say, well, it's infinite and blah. It doesn't work. There's no infinite object. Objects are all finite. So you got to point and say ether. And if you can't do that, you can't draw it, you can't make an image of the ether, you say, no, I'm going to define it, fine, then it's a concept. Okay? You don't define God. God you either point to if he's an object, if it is an object, if God is an object, or you define God if God is love, God is intelligence, then define those words, and in which case he's not an object. You can't have both ways. God cannot be a concept and also an object. Either God has shape or he don't. That's how simple it is. And the same with an ether. Either it has shape or it doesn't. Okay? Very simple.